Harrison Bob. Carter. Abraham Lincoln? You're right. Congratulations. Try to give him a big five. What member of president was he?
Way to go, Doris!
Alright, so this is the Block family. And we welcome you in.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back in Kansas again.
This is all four.
What a great crowd we have back in Kansas again. I first visited Kansas in '59.
Oh, you have from your museum in Springfield, Illinois?
I don't get the name museum for me as of yet.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Well, I might have to get over there if I look that long. My first trip to Kansas was in '59 when I was on the campaign trail running for president. But we'll go back a lot farther than that. I was born February 12, 1809. I still Kentucky. Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. I had a brother shortly after I was born. I did not remember him. He died when I was still a young infant. I have a sister by the name of Sarah. We lived down there on a small acreage for a few years. My father really didn't know if he owned that land or not. But he did have 180 acres farther north that we eventually moved up to on that piece of property. Knob Creek, or Singing Springs Farm, as we called it. I lived there until I was approximately 20. That's where my father taught me how to farm. Can hide, smoke and eat, raise a garden. Also worked in the distillery with him. He was a barrel maker. Very fine carpenter. Well, when I was approximately 20 years of age, I moved up to Indiana. Went to work in a general store. The gentleman had me build a flatboat to take goods, extra supplies down the Saginaw River to the Ohio, to Mississippi, and down into Louisiana. Father brought us up very religious. He insisted we attend church at least every Sunday if at all possible. Well, when I got down to New Orleans, that's where I really found out how they treated the Negroes, the darkness. It bothered me very much, for I knew God created man as equal, not to be treated this way. I eventually went into partnership with another gentleman running the general store. He bailed on me. We were going broke. I did file bankruptcy, or go bankrupt, but I did pay back all my debts. Took me a long time. But while working in that general store, a gentleman passing through, traveling across country, had a barrel of goods, tools that were wore out. I really didn't want them, but felt sorry for them, so I purchased those tools anyway, or I traded for some other items. And that slowly going through that barrel through several days, when I arrived at the bottom of them, I found books. I love to read. I would read a book once or twice. I've read it several times. In fact, Shakespeare was one of my favorite writers. I almost had Hamlet memorized. Robert Burns was a favorite poet of mine. But the number one book I enjoyed the most was the Bible. I got a lot of strength out of it. I received a lot of guidance from the Bible. It kept going through my life. Well, when I got to the bottom of that barrel, there was books on English law. I started reading them. Couldn't make it as a riverboat pilot. Couldn't make it as a postmaster. I tried surveying. Wasn't making any money. Oh, I have many professions in life. As I was studying these books, I became an apprentice lawyer. After studying a long time, I started taking on cases on my own under the guidance of a couple other gentlemen. I traveled the circuit 6 months, arrived back home, done my studying, my paperwork the other 6 months. I remember my brother-in-law one night, we went out and stole a couple of hogs. He asked me to represent him in a court of law. I did. Judge asked the other gentleman, he says, how do you know this gentleman stole your hogs that night? He said, Your Honor, it was a full moon. I could see him just as plain as day. My coat, I pulled out the almanac. I went to that date. I said, Your Honor, on such and such a date, according to this almanac, there was no full moon. Judge says, let me see that almanac, please. So I showed it to him. I laid him up on his desk. He looked at it. He says, case dismissed. But what he forgot to do was look at the year of the almanac. Just one of them little lawyer tricks. After practicing law for several years, there was a few gentlemen, very prominent people throughout the state of Illinois that wanted me to run for the state legislature. I agreed to it. I was courting Mary Todd at the time. I broke it off. She started courting Mr. Stephen Douglas. Very good friend of mine, but we had our differences. But he was still a very good friend of mine. I ran for state legislature right before the election. I joined the Army. When I arrived to my post, they made me captain of the troops right away. I lost that election. I served my term in the military. Arrived back home to Springfield. Started practicing law again, and they were asking me to run for state legislature again, so I did. I won that election. I won several other elections after that. People in Washington were asking me to run for president. Well, I was back courting Mary hot. And she always did say, someday I will be married to the President of the United States. Well, we were married. I won the election. I started out with the Whig Party. We had the Democrat Party. We had the Whig Party. And I ran under the newly formed Republican Party, which was just a few years old. Well, we arrived in Washington, or I did, and a few days later, Mary and the boys arrived. She looked at the people's house and she said, what a disgrace this is. The rugs were all torn, the furniture was torn, no decent cookware,
Aubrey.
stormyware. Mary said, hey, I'm going to take a trip to New York City to buy new furnishings for the people's house, new clothing for the boys. Looks like you clothes too. I said, yeah. She says, I'd like to pick up a few new dresses also. I said, that's fine, Mother. She gets on the train, goes to New York City. She comes back home, and shortly after that, the merchandise started arriving at the people's house. Shortly after that, the bills were coming in. I never did see them. She was hiding them from me. That eventually caught up to her. She spent more than my first year's wages on refurnishing the White House. Oh, I was upset, but I thought, well, I was bankrupt once, paid off all my debts. I would find a way to take care of these bills. I had a little talk with Mother. She learned to control the money a little bit better. After all, she did come from a very well-to-do family, and I was just a very poor man. Well, while in Illinois, I was getting ready to leave for the White House. And at this time, I would like to read my farewell address. My friends, no one, not in my situation, can appreciate my feeling of sadness at this party, to this place, and the kindness of these people. I owe everything. Here I have lived a quarter of a century and have passed from a young to an old man. Here, my children have been born, and one is buried. I now leave not knowing when or whether ever I may return. But with the task before me greater than that which rested upon Washington, without the assistance of that divine being, whoever attended him, I cannot succeed. With that assistance, I cannot fail. Trusting in Him who can go with me and remain with you and be everywhere for the good, let us all confidently hope that all will yet be well. To His care, commending you as I hope in your prayer you will commend me. I bid you an affectionate farewell. While in Washington, 7 southern states want to succeed, form their own country. I want to keep this country as one. One country, not two. The southern states wanted slavery. I did not believe in it. So therefore, we have two problems. Fort Sumner, Wilson's Creek, Pea Ridge, Shiloh, Seven Pines, Beaver Dam Creek, Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. One of the worst battles, not the worst battle of the Civil War. There was more to come. 30,000 Confederate and Union soldiers killed, wounded, but several other thousand died after that, pounded their wounds. Over 1,000 horses in that small area. Mr. Edwards wants to dedicate a portion of that battlefield. He was going to be the main speaker. It took him several months to get his speech together. We set a date, he would cancel it, set a date, he would cancel it. Finally in November, I boarded a train from Baltimore, 80-mile trip to Gettysburg. I wrote my speech several times. I was throwing in the trash can because I did not have it the way I wanted. Newspaper reporters were pulling them out, writing them up. They all had it wrong. I arrived at Gettysburg. People were traveling weeks at a time to come. There was people out there so far you couldn't see them all. Cold, rainy, drizzly, sleety, November day. Reverend H.L. Bowers opened the ceremony with prayers. Several black bands played for quite a while. Mr. Edwards gets up, gives his 2 hours and 15-minute speech. I didn't think anybody would stick around for my speech. I get up front to give my speech. There was nothing but pure silence. You could hear every little bird singing the song. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated and long endured. We are met on a portion of that battlefield. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who fought and died here, struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little know, nor long remember what we say here. But it can never forget what they did here. It is for us living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work that these, which they who fought here thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That from these honored dead, we take full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. When I wrote that speech, I took our country back to the beginning. 87 years ago, 87 years prior to this, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation. That is when we became a country of our own. I brought that speech today, and I projected that speech into the future. Mother and I are sitting down one morning for breakfast. Robert comes in for breakfast and says, "Father, I'm joining the army." Oh, Mother was upset, and so was I. We've already lost 2 boys. I don't know if we could have taken loose another one of our own boys, let alone all the soldiers we have lost. It's been a rough life on us. So hard to take. They say freedom is free. How many gallons of blood has this country spent for freedom? That is not free. Robert comes home from the army. He does his time. We were so thankful. Sitting down for breakfast, approximately 7 a.m., I have 1 egg, piece of bread, 1 cup of coffee. I tell Mother I have cabinet meetings, and I will see her approximately 2 o'clock for lunch. Maybe sooner, I'll let her know. I'll send a courier out. We have lunch. She says, I'd like to go to Ford's Theater tonight, not the other one, to see our American cousins. She says, I asked the Grants if they could go to the show with us, to the theater. I said, that's fine, I'll ask Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant declined. He says, we haven't seen our kids for a long time. We'd like to go back to Philadelphia to see our own kids, so we are going to decline. I said, that's fine, I totally understand. Mary found out, I let her know that the Grants couldn't attend with us. She says, well, I'll ask another couple. I said, that's fine. 6 o'clock, we have supper. She says, it's such a nice day outside. Let's take the carriage ride, go down to the shipyard, take a look at the ship. The lilacs are in full bloom, they smell wonderful. The dogwoods smell great. We take the carriage ride. We ride back home, get ready for the theater. I said, Mother, we better get going. She said, yeah. I said, well, So first I got a few more papers I need to sign so we can get the people's work done for the day. I said, why don't you get a hold of the carriage driver, have him get the carriage ready, and I'll be out in a few minutes. I take care of the people's work. We arrived at Forest Theater, we were late. It was right before the second act. They stopped the play. The band played Hail to the Chief. People applauded. They sit down, the play resumes.
What is going on
Nothing.
with Isaac?
Nothing.
So if there's any questions, I'd be
They
happy
were
to take it down.
it was a misunderstanding with Madison. They were talking about a waffle business and Dad was suspicious about it and thought that
I live in
we were
the
talking
area,
about
yes,
sex,
I just
but
live
it wasn't
southwest
sex,
of
they
here,
were
we're
talking
white.
about waffle business. 'Cause
Yes, I do.
So where are Mom and Dad?
This year
What's
alone,
happening?
I shot a video for the Smithsonian Institute. And as the other lady asked me earlier if I've been to
Right
the
here.
museum and things, yes,
I
I
have his
have
phone.
more than once.
I don't know
He's
where they
in
are.
there
Went to
with the
Springfield,
chapel
Illinois
mom.
this year for the reenactment of my own funeral.
So is Isaac in trouble or not?
No.
Okay, John.
I do several
Fucking
historical
damn.
events, parades. I've been shot down at Fort Scott this year. I've been shot down at Fort Margaret this year. I do schools, private parties, parades, historical events, what have you. We've been attending them, this will be our 7th year coming up. Yes, I have been. They rotate it though, the same person doesn't get it, or nobody will attend. The lady asked me if that's real beer. She's in doubt. I'm going to give her the pleasure of pulling on it.
I thought you'd give her a whisper. Is it real? It's real. All right. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, who was the first person that said you looked like Abe Lincoln? Do you remember? And when was it?
Approximately 7 years ago, 8 years ago, excuse me, father-in-law comes up from Texas. He says, I'm going to take Denise, and we're going to go on a road trip. I says, that's fine. I asked Dean, I says, how long are you going to be gone? He says, I don't know. 4, 5, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. He says, I don't know until we get back home. And I says, fine. Go and have fun with your daughter, father-daughter time, you know. I couldn't go, kind of my regular job. I made the comment, I said, I'm not going to shave until you get back. My beard grows pretty fast. I didn't shave anything. Well, about after 7 weeks, it was pretty ragged, rough looking. I get off the road. Denise says, can I trim on your beard? She says, I just want to eat, straighten it out. And I said, yeah, first time I ever grew a beard. So she trimmed on it. A few weeks later, I get off the road and she says, can I trim on your beard? And I said, yeah. She trimmed a little here, a little there. This went on several times. Arrived home one Saturday morning, getting off the highway. She says, I would like to trim on your beard. I says, fine. I sit down, she's just trimming away. All of a sudden, she just steps back. Just stares at me. I says, okay, you really goofed it up this time, didn't you? I says, cut it off. She didn't say a word. I just cut it off, goofed it up too much. She just stared. She finally says, go look at yourself in the mirror. And that's what I did. That's how the looks was discovered. But I always did have the looks, but how many pictures have you seen of Abraham Lincoln without any beard? There's a lot. I always did have the looks and did not know it. Any other questions?
Honest Dave, I got a question for you.
Yes.
How did you get on the penny?
I was the first president to be pictured on any money.
Why not? I mean, the penny's only worth a penny. Why not a quarter? Or,
I'm also on the $5 bill.
Oh yeah. Forgot about that.
I'll take a 5 cent. There you go, that's 5. Now, when I was in office, I implemented the first holiday. Can you name it?
President's Day.
No.
Oh, I don't know then.
Every state had a day of Thanksgiving. They were all different. I made it a national holiday on one particular day for the whole country. I also designed the layout of land, sections, ranges, and townships, and that's account of the railroads. Because I was a big favor of the railroads to expand this country. I commandeered the Northern Railroads through the Civil War to transport goods to our soldiers. I nationalized the banks. Each bank used to print their own money. Bank A over here would not accept Bank B's money because they're going broke. We don't want their money, it won't be any good. So you got money in your billfold, in your pocket from 4 different banks, and maybe only 2 of them were good. So I nationalized the banks. Any other questions?
Over here. Were you interested in the history of Lincoln before you found out you looked like him?
A little bit, but not like I am now. After I got into it, I really realized what type of life he lived, how terrible it was on him, how hard it was on him to marry, losing